Hello and welcome to this special series of Ingram Micro's B2B Tech Talk podcast, Coffee with Women in Tech, with your host, Harpreet. This is a show where incredible women in technology share their stories and successes. Why should a woman consider a career in tech? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this series, where you'll learn why tech is just the place to be for women.
Hello, everyone. I'm Harpreet Narang, and welcome to Coffee with Women in Tech podcast. Today, I have with me Anjana Srinivasan, device sales lead at Microsoft, who has spent 15 years in strategy, marketing, sales, and operational roles in the technology industry. Hi, Anjana. How are you?
I am really well, Harpreet. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, and delighted to have you here.
And such a pleasure and such an honor to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. Pleasure's all mine. Let's talk about your career path because, my goodness, you've had such a wide breadth of roles: sales, marketing, operations. Wow.
Yeah, I think that, um, being a learner all my life has really been the motivating factor. It's incredibly humbling to skip disciplines, feel like you don't know anything, and start from the very beginning. It helps you go back to the fundamentals and rebuild. And I guess that's how it's been so far, and hopefully it continues. It's definitely interesting this way.
Yeah, it definitely sounds very brave as well. I must ask, is there a specific area that you've enjoyed the most?
That's really interesting. That's an interesting question because I did think many times in my life that, now I'm going to settle down, I'm going to be a marketer. Now I'm going to settle down, I'm going to drive things in operations because, it's XY. And I came into Microsoft with a certain mindset as well that, I'm going to do this category role, but am I really a marketer? And I think I've had some time to reflect on this question over the last year and a half, and it's been really fascinating to observe how each experience has built on itself, and how the next experience is richer because the experiences I've previously had. In my role today, I get to do a little bit of marketing, get to do a little bit of sales, get to do a little bit of operations. And because of that, and because I've had those experiences, the current role that I'm in feels the best role. And I think each role is enhanced by those other roles that I've done. So, if you asked me the one thing that I'm going to do, I probably wouldn't have an answer. I think the right thing to say is, I think that if a new experience feels challenging, feels compelling, feels like I can make an impact, I'd probably do it.
Yeah, that's great. So, how did you develop your career in technology?
I studied architecture. I was trained in architecture, actually. I was then in advertising and sales. And I remember something that a professor in architecture once told me. He said that less than 2% of you, told the class, I think, he said that less than 2% of you will pursue a degree in architecture. But what each of you will walk away with is an understanding of a consumer and their needs. And you'll bring it to life in different ways, because that's what we really spend time honing in architecture: is who is that human who is going to live inside this house? What are their motivations? What are they looking for? What are their behaviors? How do we build a space that's right for that person, that organization, and so on and so forth, that's really tailored to their needs? So, coming out of school in architecture, advertising felt like the right place to be. Sales felt like the right place to be. I was always circling around consumer behavior and consumer motivations, just coming at it in different aspects. And technology actually ended up being, it was an accidental entry. I think if you're looking to be in the world of consumer behavior, especially 20 years ago, FMCG companies were those companies, especially back home in India, where this was the nirvana of marketing, where, you saw them really understand consumer behavior, and they were the gold standard, if you will. Um, but soon after entering technology, I had an aha moment. And I think that the last 20 years have been so interesting for us in technology, especially the last 10, with the level of pace of innovation that's been happening.
Yeah, true.
The realization that I came to is that technology is the new FMCG. We are in the category which is touching people's lives in so many ways. and how successful technologies are those technologies that really deliver to or cater to needs and motivations of people. So whilst I came in without really knowing this was why, I have stayed knowing this was why.
I love that. Technology is the new FMCG. Yeah. So what would you say would be like, the biggest opportunities in technology for women?
Um, so I think first of all, we need to demystify technology a little bit because I think that there's a sort of systemic bias in how technology is represented. Technology is represented, or its brand has the values of very technical software development, lots of technology, robots, and video games, which are which are not probably things that are attractive to a lot of women. Going all the way back to school, like STEM is shown as video games or robots, which probably I was not drawn to as someone in school. I think technology, if you think about it, and especially if you think about it with the filter of it's the new FMCG, there are many roles within technology that are not technical, that are HR and finance and marketing and sales, and there are people-centric roles and so on and so forth. So I think if you look at technology like that, and if you expand its scope to cover everything, including technical, but not limited to, in my mind, any of these roles are applicable to women, right? I think that there is a systemic bias in siloing technology as technical, and that might not be attractive. And I think the step one to make roles in technology applicable to women is to actually expand the scope of it and open kimono to show everything that goes into it. And from that perspective, I would say, if you're drawn to working with people and helping coach and develop people, then HR is the right one for you. And HR in Facebook or Google or Microsoft is much the same as HR in, any other company, and that would be the right organization for you. Equally marketing, and Harpreet, you yourself are in marketing, and I'm sure you have the same experience. Ultimately, you're marketing something to a consumer, and you're delivering a product that meets the aspirations or meets the needs of that consumer, and you happen to be delivering technology through what you're talking about. And if that's attractive to you, then that's a role for you, right? So I take a pretty
Exactly.
expansive role
Yeah,
view.
agreed. And absolutely. And technology is so much more than, like you said, robots and gadgets and so much more, really. It touches every aspect of life these days.
Exactly, and never more so today than before, right? I was thinking about this conversation we were going to have, and I was just thinking about the level of pace of dynamism over the last 10 years. Like, 10 years ago, we didn't have Uber or Airbnb or Kickstarter or HoloLens or a tablet, or we didn't have so many things. So look at the pace of change that's happened, and look at how these changes have impacted us as consumers. Today, I have Deliveroo delivering my food, Uber helping organize my cars or get taxi. And this is not about a robot, or this is not about technical stuff. This is about how you engage and impact consumers' lives. So I think, if anything, it's a lot more pervasive and a lot more applicable to all kinds of people now.
Yeah, agreed. That's very true. So, being in a male-dominated industry, what would you say is the best thing about being a woman in technology?
Actually, being different, I guess. um,
That's certainly the case, actually. You just have to walk in a room and it's very evident.
Exactly. No, that's exactly true. And it's both. It's something that we have to work on as an industry, right? I think that, Harpreet, I'm quite passionate about diversity, in general, and certainly diversity in technology. We're not where we want to be. But I think that, the first thing that I would say is there is a business case for diversity. definitely gender diversity, but all kinds of diversity. And there's a lot of conversation and I think realization that's happening in the industry, perhaps not just in technology, but across the board, to say diversity actually helps the bottom line and helps the top line. Given a diverse set of ideas, an idea is actually better. It's more applicable to a diverse set of consumers out there, and so on and so forth. I think Microsoft themselves have shared at industry events previously the business case for diversity. So I feel like this is starting to really get traction. We're not where we want to be, but more organizations are starting to ask the question, and more organizations are starting to feature this in their agenda, which is a good thing. I think being a woman in technology, we have an incredibly important role to play to drive this agenda forward, right? Amongst other things, right? But certainly, I'm a big believer in women helping other women. Being in a place of lack of privilege, which is, being a minority, I guess, gives you a really firsthand knowledge of what that feels like. So I think the levels of motivations with people like you and I is very high to make a change. So I would say, we're in a great place in a world which is starting to recognize the role of diversity, and it's important not just to the business but also to society. And therefore, the best position that puts us in is that we can actually go and do something about it, much like you're doing, with this podcast, really shining a light on this conversation.
Well, thanks for that. And that's absolutely true because, given the fact that Microsoft is also, doing a lot behind this because it was one of the diversity and inclusion event in London where we first met. So that's fantastic, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, more recently in July, we had a global event called Microsoft Inspire. And not to be cliched, I was incredibly inspired by the number of diversity and inclusion topics at Inspire. So to take a global stage like Inspire, where typically would have been a set of business topics and, how do we accelerate our growth here and there, and all of which are incredibly important, to also include diversity and inclusion in there was just super inspiring. Clearly there is a path to success when you bring diversity in. It's not sort of, this hoo-ha that a few people are driving, but Microsoft in itself and the journey that we've been on is a great case study to how does diversity drive success. So I'm really heartened by this. I'm motivated to be a part of this conversation, and I hope more and more companies start to have this conversation. I'm really here for it.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So let's elaborate on that. Just tell us a bit more about your journey because, what's really triggered the whole, being part of thing or being involved in the whole diversity conversation.
Absolutely. I think that I'm in a really luxurious position of having both inclusion and exclusion in my life. And I think that, I think that when you're excluded, you understand the value of inclusion, but you can channel that into resentment. But having been included really helped me understand the power of inclusion, and therefore, my passion to drive inclusion. Certainly at the workplace, certainly for women, but more broadly for all diversity as well. So I'll take you back to where I've come from. I've come from, India. It's a country that many people know. I was born a woman, which is certainly a minority, in India. You might be deeply familiar with the experience that some of us can have. It is a society that's quite male dominated. So growing up as a woman, I have had periods in my life where I haven't felt as excluded. I haven't felt like I have belonged. I haven't felt like I was the preferred majority, if you will. And I think that, the lack of privilege is something that really helps you understand, what privilege can feel like if you have it. There's this interesting saying, privilege is invisible to those who have it. You don't realize how lucky you are unless you don't have it, right? So, and equally,
Absolutely.
not having it gives you a good seat to what you don't have. I then went on to become a woman in technology. And as you and I have just discussed, India is no different. There is far fewer women in technology. And I think that, what that leads to is systemically, institutionally, those places are not built for women, right? Long work days are the norm. So if you are somebody who wants to be a caretaker back home, it's not really built for you. And in order to succeed, you need to, put in those long hours. And a lot is changing, Harpreet. I want to caveat that, but that was my experience 20 years ago, right? A lot has changed in the positive direction, but this is my story. And again, I had to make several sacrifices to be at the workplace, which I couldn't have made if I had a family, if I did not have, the ability to, work long hours. I did not have to feed someone back home, et cetera, et cetera. I then went on to live outside of the country where I became a different kind of minority, right? And that comes with its own experiences, right?
Yeah.
Being, random checks at the airport are not so random, et cetera, type of experiences. So these are experiences that really help me understand exclusion. And exclusion is almost, I think we've shared, exclusion is almost a physical experience. It feels like, it feels like pain. But I was super lucky in parallel, because what also happened to me was, through the workplace, through the relationships that I had built, I did experience inclusion. And I was at a point in my life where I was at a crossroads that many women are, do I go and, live in another continent with then my boyfriend, now my partner, to go pursue a life? Or do I climb the career ladder because it seemed to be going really well in the place that I was in? And I was afforded the opportunity to actually go pursue my relationship and pursue my career at the same time. The organization and my manager put the faith in me that I could do what I needed to do from a very different place. And I had many other such experiences which really balanced out the exclusion that I felt at some points in my life, which really made me passionate about inclusion and really understand the power of inclusion. So, I feel like it is my job, therefore, to pay it forward. I want to create a world for my son, for our kids, where it is easier to live the lives that they want. It is more equal opportunity. I'm very conscious that I'm standing on the shoulders of the women before us, and equally, I want to be a part of that network and the matrix where our kids can stand on our shoulders and we leave a better world for them. It seems super lofty, but I am super passionate about it, and I feel like anything that I can do to make a difference, I absolutely will.
And that's such a great way of looking at it, isn't it? Because when I first heard you talk at that event, Microsoft's diversity and inclusion event, I could see that passion. And to be honest, you are already making such a great difference. So, and that's
Thank
again a
you.
very fantastic way of looking at this, and paving the way forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I think we're in this together, right? I think that I can't do this alone. Together though, and the more network of people that we get into it, and the more decision makers get into this, which they are, I think we can really make a difference. And that's just an energizing idea that we're actually able to make a difference to create a better world. I'm in.
Yes, and it's so important to take others on the same journey as well, both men and women. So they
Absolutely.
both have a role to play in this whole conversation. So absolutely. Very
Absolutely.
interesting. So now you have worked with big brands, like you said, O&M and Lenovo and Microsoft, but equally, you've also created a very strong personal brand in your professional life. I mean, everybody I speak to, I just have to say your name, and there's a string of praise that follows.
Oh, wow. You're very kind. Everyone's very kind.
So how have you gone about doing this, building that strong personal brand, which I'm sure is a huge asset in a workplace, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's a really good question, Harpreet. Because I think that some of the things I have done myself, which is what I've learned from, is not bet on myself enough. And I think that, this has really come from a series of learning. So I'm really happy to share. So I think it wasn't always this way. So I want to say this, and I am a work in progress, and I will continue to be. So I want to make this super accessible to anyone listening. That this is a journey. This is a new journey for me, and it's a journey, right? It's not a pinnacle. I'm not where I want to be, and it's not that I've decided a destination, but it's a work in progress. But a few things that I learned in my life was to really, number one, find the seat at the table. And I had a very inspiring mentor in Sheryl Sandberg. She's not a personal mentor, although I did send her an email once telling her that she's amazing, and she responded, which is very cool. Um, but I came across Sheryl Sandberg many, many years ago when she first became, the Facebook COO. She did the TED Talk and so on and so forth. And she has this concept of sitting at the table. And it really resonated with me. I was a young 20 something in, granted late 20s, something in Lenovo in India. And, especially in a male dominated world, as women, we sort of find the cracks to fit into. We don't want to create commotion. So if there are no chairs at the table, we'll literally sit at the back of the table. Or, if there's no coffee at the table, I'll bring the coffee to the table. If nobody's talking about taking notes, I'll take notes, type of thing. And that was absolutely where I found myself all the time. And listening to Cheryl's TED Talk was really seminal. And I started to research her and learned a lot more about what she was saying. And this concept of sitting at the table was something that really resonated with me because it physically wasn't something I would do. So um, um, then number two was probably just survival, just like, surviving in a male dominated world. Often we'll find that women are lost to speak, right? Share their opinion or be vocal. I was definitely one of them. And I would leave the meeting and then go to my boss and say, hey, listen, you remember you were talking about that? I had this idea and that would be amazing. And I had this idea and that would be amazing. And I would find that, and he would just be open and tell me, why didn't you share this in the room, Anjana? That would have been great to hear your point of view in the room, and so on and so forth. Right. So what I really took away from that is, if I am not going to believe in myself and back my own ideas, I'm probably not going to get into a position where people are going to listen to what I am saying. And whilst it's fantastic for to hope for a manager who's going to wait to stop and listen to you, and that's the right thing to do, right? We need to hear the quietest voice in the room, and we need to coach all managers to do that. I think equally the onus is on me to make sure that I am not being heard, if that makes sense. So it was a huge stretch. It was a leap of faith at some point in time to get myself that seat at the table. It was another leap of faith to, voice my ideas. Out of the 10 times I would speak, 4 times it would not be, now would not land all that well, but 6 times it would. And I would really focus, again, as we tend to focus on what's not working, but I would really try and focus on what is working to really build up the courage to do this over and over again. And the third thing I did was just made really uncomfortable decisions. So, if it is a media event, if it is a presentation, if it is anything, just sign myself up to doing it so that I then prepare, get to do it, and face my fears a little bit more again and again. I will tell you that even today, before I get in front of a few people and present, I get nervous. It's just something that's always stayed with me. But the approach that I've done is believe in what you've got to say, Anjana, and then just do it over and over again. Right. And the nervousness is not a deterrent. It's just what you feel when you do these things. And once it's done, you're feeling really good and you've shared your thoughts and you shared your ideas and you're connecting with a whole host of people. And I've gotten more comfortable with that nervousness today.
I guess once you put yourself in that uncomfortable position again and time again, you just get used to that discomfort and then it becomes
Exactly.
nature. It becomes a second
Exactly.
nature. Mm.
Exactly. I think that is it an Osho saying, and you might know the reference to Osho, Harpreet.
Yeah, I do actually.
Courage is not the absence of fear, right? It is the ability to live with it. So, I would say that, like I said, till date, I have nervousness when I'm presenting. I have nervousness when I'm standing in front of a group of people. And, a lot of people tell me, I don't think you look nervous, but I am, and I prep a lot for that nervousness, but I present through it and I'm better at it at the end of it. And that helps me, next time.
And I'm sure this would resonate with so many women because it is so
Exactly.
true. The whole it's like it's not the absence of fear because we all feel it. It's almost like conquering it and doing things and putting yourself out there despite that.
Exactly. And I think that the at least what I hope to leave, with the audience and sharing this is that it is so normal to have fear. The fear is not should not be a deterrent, right? Fear is normal. If you're trying to do something you haven't done before, you are going to question and wonder, but really back yourself, work through the fear, and then you'll be better for it.
Absolutely. Totally agree to that. So, is there anything you've done in terms of training to drive your career in technology? Is there any advice you can give to women outside of technology, something they can do in terms of training?
Absolutely. So, look, like I said, if you think about technology quite expansively, you've got all kinds of roles within technology, right? So HR, marketing, finance, sales, supply chain, logistics, da 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 da. There's a whole bunch of roles. So I think step one is just figuring out what what is the right role for you, what meets your strengths. And I think it's really important to operate from a focus on strengths, because that's what will give you contentment, that's what will give you peace, and that's what will give you a feeling of satisfaction. So, internships are a really good idea. I would hugely recommend them because it's a great way for us to get into an organization, see the different roles that exist in an organization, and then really feel what really works for you. The second type of thing that I would really recommend is mentorships. I think, uh, a lot of women or men will be accessible to mentorships to a lot of people who ask for it. Help comes to those who receive it. And I know that there are mentorship programs that are out there. I'm currently working on one as a mentor right now, where we're helping BAME community people explore Microsoft and look at the different opportunities and really coach them through career opportunities, right? So there's several organizations that are out there that help facilitate links with companies like Microsoft and several other companies that are out there. Once you've kind of locked in on an area of expertise or a mentorship, really leverage those things to get your teeth in, I would say. As I look at resumes today, um, I don't always look for people coming from technology, right? If they have sales experience in a like organization, I'm absolutely open to bringing them in. So that's if somebody is already working. If somebody is not already working, then what kind of internships do they have? What have they studied in school or college that might be relevant for me for the discipline that I'm hiring for, right? So it's really important to break down technology into disciplines, because otherwise it tends to get super broad, right? And the third thing I
True.
would say is identify mentors, go and ask for help. And once you have a mentor, you have that coach in a tech company or outside who can really help you find a leg into that company or those type of organizations or roles that might come up. But really, my big mantra is break it down. Don't look at it as technology. Look at it as, technology that empowers people, but, I want marketing or things like that. That will really help navigate much better.
Fantastic advice. Yeah, that's great. So talking about these internships, so if somebody wants to find out more information, they simply go to Microsoft website, then they look at the disciplines they might be interested in, and then take it from there, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think there's a number of resources and there's a number of types of programs that you can be a part of Microsoft with. There's degree apprenticeships, there's internships, and all of that would be on Microsoft Careers.
Brilliant. That's great. So is there how have you gone about choosing your mentors? How do who would be the right fit? Is there a almost like a thought process there? How do you choose
Absolutely.
mentors?
100%. And I think, I mean, to be honest with you, um, my best experience of this has really been at Microsoft, where there is a significant focus on development, right? Both personal and career. Um, and I think what's really helpful is to have some kind of a plan slash possibilities framework, if you will, right? I know that it can be daunting when somebody asks you about your 5-year plan and you're at the beginning of your career journey and you don't know where you're going. Or maybe your career has developed quite organically and you like to keep developing it organically, right? So it really depends on where you are in your career. But what I would say is be intentional. A plan or a possibility document is what you know at that point. It's not something that you're wedded to, but it helps you draft some kind of a guidance plan or where you would like to go. It could be to, I want this role 20 years from now, if you have that kind of clarity. I didn't. Or it could be to, like, I approach it as these are the two types of roles I'd like to see myself in based on what I know right now. And identifying those two types of roles in the future really helped me say, okay, if I want to go to role A, this is what I really need to build in myself. And this is the strength I need to harness. And I worked with my manager, I worked with HR to identify who could really help me get that. Sometimes it's someone but sometimes you need to go out there with an idea and ask the world, ask the universe to conspire for you. And I did the same thing with role B, right? In role B, this is what it'll take for me to get there. I actually know someone who could really help me get there, and I reached out to them. And the second piece of advice is don't be afraid, right? I think that there are very, very well-meaning people in this world today, and if you ask the question and they're able to help you, that's fantastic. If they're not able to help you, they will likely point you to someone who can. Or at the very worst, they will be super thankful for the opportunity, but say, probably not for me this time, which is not the worst thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
Ask for help. Ask for help when you need it, either with HR or either with the mentor directly.
And most people would actually feel flattered to be
Absolutely.
asked. Yeah,
Absolutely. 100%.
that's great. So, for a woman outside technology right now, if you could say one thing to her, why should she consider a career in technology?
Well, I mean, I'm super biased and I want all women in technology. So this is perhaps going to be a little bit, extra.
We would love that.
But I think if you're someone who is motivated by having significant impact on consumers' lives, working on something that's deeply pervasive, that's touching everyone's life, in every way possible, then technology is the field for you, right? If you think about it, we wake up in the morning looking at technology, not a great habit, but we do. If we want to meditate and calm down, that's in technology, right? If you're using a Calm or a Headspace app, your work is in technology, you're organizing your kids' lives in technology, you're meeting your friends, you're staying connected with the world in technology, and then you're entertaining yourselves through technology. There isn't a more pervasive discipline for you to be in. And if that level of impact and pervasiveness motivates you, please come join us.
That's fantastic advice. And yeah,
I'm like,
if
I'll
I
step
wasn't if
aside.
I wasn't in tech already, I'd be
Yeah.
motivated to be part of tech just listening to that.
But that's genuinely how I feel because that's genuinely what technology is, right?
Exactly. And you're absolutely right. And it's only when most of us, we land here accidentally. And it's only when we come here we realize, wow, what a place to be.
Yeah,
What a
no,
dynamic, fast-paced place to be.
exactly. And it's only going to get more and more fun. The pace of innovation is only going to be fun, continue to be fun.
Exactly. Absolutely. And we'll be part of it. We'll be part of the fun.
Exactly.
One thing I ask every guest on this podcast is if you could time travel, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, wow. I would say just believe, you know. Even now, I say that to myself sometimes. But it is a luxurious position to be in, to believe in yourself and believe in your ideas and back yourself. It's something that I'm a big fan of Mahendra Singh Dhoni for. I'm a big Dhoni fan, if anyone follows cricket.
Oh, I like him too.
um, but um, the mental journey living, right, changes considerably when you believe in yourself. I think the idea that you're constantly second guessing yourself, is this right, is this not right, is the normal insecurity that we all grow up with, and I think I had my fair share. And if I could not have that, and if I could believe in my ideas back in the day, I would have grown up a happy teenager, a happier teenager. I was a very happy teenager. I would have been happier.
Anjana, it's been really fantastic talking to you. I mean, I could keep chatting on with you. It's been so much fun.
Oh, thank you, Harpreet. This has been really fun. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on this podcast, and thank you for sharing your story and journey with all of us. You are an inspiration.
Oh, thank you. And you are too, Harpreet. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you so much for shining a light on this important conversation.
And thank you very much for joining me today. And thank you to everyone for listening. Bye for now.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this special series, Coffee with Women in Tech, from B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. This was hosted by Harpreet Narang. Tune in again to listen to another great story. To not miss an episode, subscribe today in your favorite podcast platform.